So today is Friday, Chavhei Nisan Tavshin Ayin Gimel, and we are in the Maimer in Sefer HaMamorim Teres Menachem, or rather Teres Menachem Sefer HaMamorim, the Maimer of Yom Beis the Chag HaShavuos Tavshin Yud Aleph. The Maimer is on the words Alpayim Shana Kodma Torah L'Olam, the B'riyasa Shel Olam. We are on page Tzadik Hey. We are in the middle of defining the 5 descriptions concerning Torah as they are found, as they are articulated in Mishlei chapter 8, Psukim Lamed and Lamed Aleph, verse 30 and 31. The 5 descriptions being Torah as Omain, a nursling beside him, beside Hashem, and then as a delight every day, Shashuyim Yom Yom, which is basically the subject of our Maimer. The other one, the next one being Mesachekes Lefanav B'chol Eis, playing before him, before Hashem at all times. The 4th one, beginning in verse 31, playing in his habitable world. And the final one, the 5th one, V'shashu I es b'nei Adam, and my delights, meaning Hashem's delights, with the children of man. And the Rebbe is explaining that Omain, Torah as Etzlei Omain, described as V'ehi Etzlei, Torah that will be in the future a nursling beside him, is Torah as it is at the very essence. Torah in the very essence of Hashem. Etzlei. Sha'ashuyim, Torah, the next description, Torah as Sha'ashuyim, delight, not my delight, implying Hashem's delight, or a more clear expression referring to Torah as Hashem's delight, but rather Shashuyim Stam, just plain delight. That refers to Torah as it is at the level of Chochmah and Bina, which is, as we learned in the Maimer up until now, that's where we derive this idea of Alpayim, because it says Yom Yom, right? And Alefcha Chochmah, Alefcha Bina, I will teach you Chochmah, I will teach you Bina. Alpayim from the expression of Alefcha. So Yom Yom is a reference to Torah at the level of Chochmah and Bina, the level of intellect. The next one is we're not yet up to the next one. We're still in the process of describing this idea of Sha'ashuyim. The question being, if we're talking about Torah at the level of Chochmah Bina, of intellect, why are we referring to it as Sha'ashuyim, delight? Delight seems to imply a relationship to Tainuk, to pleasure. And here we're talking about Torah at the level of Chochmah Bina, of intellect. And in the order of Spheres, of the divine attributes, Tainug is a reference to Pnimiyus HaKeser, the innermost dimension of Keser, which is beyond the intellect, beyond Chochmah and Bina. So the Rebbe explains this as meaning that Chochmah and that Torah, although it is related to Chochmah and Bina, it is rooted beyond Chochmah and Bina. With that, he described this expression that we find, Eiraisim Chochmah Nafkas, Torah comes from Chochmah, and he defined this as meaning that Chochmah is that which brings Torah to revelation. However, it is rooted beyond Chochmah, which is what? Keser. That's why we find that pleasure, Tainug, finds expression, has an association with Chochmah and with Bina. First, he talks about Chochmah. Our sages say, for example, he brings us an example, in Yerushalmi it says that Rabbi Abohu's face turned golden radiant with gold, with a gold color, when he found a new Tosefta, a new Tosefta is like a Braisa, it's like a saying from the Tanoim, right? When he found a new Tosefta, his face turned golden radiant. What's that gold radiance from? That's from the Tainug that he had, from the pleasure that he had from finding this new Tosefta. And finding something new is the idea of Chochmah. What's the idea of Chochmah? That spark, right? So when he found this new Tosefta, his face turned gold, with a gold color with radiance. Why? Because it was that was the Tainug aspect that is embedded within the Chochmah, finding expression. Of course, albeit in a subtle way, because the Rebbe goes on to say that in Bina, Tainug finds revelation. right? And with this, he goes on to explain the idea of Gan Eden. That's where we're up to. Let's go back a few lines. 3 lines from the top on page Sadekei. The Hina Yodua, it is known Hadik B'Losh Chazal. The pointing out the accuracy in the expression of our sages, which says, what's the expression? Eirais and Chachma Nafkes Teira comes from Chachma. Nafkes Daika. Nafkes means comes out from Chachma. What does it mean? It comes out from Chachma or through Chachma. Shagil Shallahu Yadei Chachma. The revelation of Teira is through Chachma, which is the highest component of the intellect. But Aval Shosha, that implies that its source Hulamayla Chachma is beyond Chachma. Where is the source of Teira? B'Bchinas Hataynik Shalamayla, in the celestial pleasure, in the idea of Pnimius HaKeser, in the level of Pnimius HaKeser. V'lachein gam kishebal is galus b'meichen Chachma Bina. Therefore, also when Teira comes down as revealed Teira, the level of the intellect of Chachma Bina, yesh ba'inyan hashashuyim, it still retains within it, it possesses within it this concept of shashuyim, delight, another way of saying pleasure. What can you do? And the Rebbe articulates it now, specifically as Tainug relates to Teira at the level of Chachma and at the level of Bina. What can you do? It's a bit of a mouthful, so I'm just going to run through as much of it as we can, because that's the key to trying to get to the bottom line of what the Rebbe is trying to say. What can you do? She's Galas Tainug Bina Davke, as is known that the actual revelation of Tainug, of pleasure, is specifically in the attribute of Bina, the second component of the intellect, Kemaimer, as our sages say in the Zohar, as the Zohar says, his galus atik bebina, the revelation of atik, the revelation of the inner component of the inner level of kesed, which is the idea of another way of saying tainug, pleasure, is where bebina, in the level of bina. This is also the reference to what the pasuk alludes to. This is also to what the pasuk alludes to when it says, and he, the Levi, will serve. Levi, as we know, is in the left line. We know that the Sfiris are in 3 kavim, 3 lines. Chochma, Chesed, and Netzach is on the right. Bina, Gvura, and Hoid is on the left, right? So, Levi is the idea of the left side, right? Kain is Isha Chesed. Levi is the idea of Gvura. If you go a level higher, we're talking about Gvura as higher than, in that line is what? Is Bina. And who is a reference to Atik. That's a reference to the level of the inner dimension of Keser. Tainug. So the Avad Halevihu, the Zohar explains that this verse, the deeper meaning of this verse, Avad Halevihu, is that the Levi, in other words, in Bina, who finds expression. The application of who, the level of Pnimius HaKeser, the level of Tainug, is where in Levi, in Bina. She's Galas Atik of Bina. The revelation of Atik, the inner dimension of Keser, is in Bina. But is even more so. So this is as it comes into full revealed pleasure. That's in Bina. Also, Bina is the idea of the woman, etc. But where more so says the Rebbe, yes, the expression of Bina is the expression of Atik, the expression of Tainug is where? Is in Bina, but the beginning of that revelation of pleasure is where, and the essence of that pleasure is where? In the aspect, in the level of Chachma. This is the concept of Rabbi Abba's face radiating with a gold color. When he found a Nutisefta, the Inyan Tisefta Chadato made al Chidish V'Hamtza. This idea of finding a Nutisefta, this is an indication for something which is an innovation, something that one finds. Which goes along with the idea of Chachma, which is also the concept of what? Finding. This is the first spark of inspiration, the first spark of the intellect. And that brings to what? That brings to from this comes this idea of pleasure, which expresses itself in the face radiating with a gold color. So we see that the idea of Tainug at the essential level is connected to what? To Chachma. And at the expression level, at the revelation level, is connected to Bina. This is also the idea of Gan Eden. Over here we say like this, there's Gan Eden. Eden means delight or pleasure. Gan Eden means the garden of delight, which means a secondary level, right? The pasuk says, "V'nohar yotzim Eden lahashkes hasagon." The river exits Eden to water the garden. So there's the level of Eden, then there's the level of Nohar, and then there's the level of Gan. So the Rebbe quotes from one Maimah where it says that Eden is Chochmah and Gan is Bina, right? Then the Rebbe quotes another Maimah which says that Nohar is Bina, and the Nohar, the river is Bina, and then and it's the river that waters the garden, which seems to imply that the garden is the next level down of the river. But the point that Rebbe ultimately is trying to make, that Eden is beyond Gan and beyond Nohar. So whether or not Gan is Bina or Nohar is Bina, which both are true, I guess it depends which aspect of Bina we're talking about. But without getting too technical, the idea means that there's Gan, there's Eden, there's Gan, and there's Nohar. Or there's Eden, Nohar, and Gan. Eden being beyond both. So let's call Nohar and Gan Bina, the different components, and Eden being beyond that, which would be a reference to what? To Chochmah. And nevertheless, it's referred to as delight. So again, we see that Chochmah is connected to what? To a concept of delight, which is the idea of Tainuk. This is also the idea of Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. That Chochmah is referred to as the word Eden, or Bina Nikras B'Shem Gan. Bina is called with the name Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. For although, as I just mentioned, Bina is the level, the aspect of the river, rather than what in the garden. Concerning which it says that the river exits from Eden, to water the garden. Which seems to imply that what? That the river is higher than the level of Gan. Mikolma can be that as it may. Moving from this alone, it's understood. Bina is not the level of Eden Atzmai itself. It's either the river or it's the garden, but not Eden itself. It's only the river that exits from Eden. And what's Eden? Chochmah is referred to as Eden itself. And what does Eden mean? Delight or pleasure. So why is Chochmah referred to as pleasure? Because that's as mentioned before. Because this is all because the root of Torah is rooted beyond Chochmah. And it's Chochmah that expresses, and that which is beyond Chochmah finds expression or is revealed or is connected to what? To the level of Chochmah. Therefore, when Torah, as it is at the level of Chochmah, and also how Chochmah causes it to find expression even lower, Torah still retains that component and its connection to the idea of Shashuyim, to the idea of delight, to the idea of pleasure. Now we go into the third description of Torah. Misachek is the fun of B'chol Eis, playing before him at all times. Which level of Torah is this a reference to? This is a reference to Koyal Torah, Kvishinim Shechas B'chinas Hamidus. Over here we're already talking about Torah as it is related to the idea of Eis, time. What is time? Biruchni spiritually, what are we talking about? As mentioned before, Sheishes Yomim Osa Hashem Es Hashemayim V'Sa'oretz. We know that the creation of the heavens and earth is connected to what? Sheishes Yomim, the 6 days. What is the inner meaning of the 6 days? The 6 midas. So when we say B'chol Eis, time, right? Yomim, we're referring to Torah at what? At the level of midas. The Koyal Torah Kvishim Shechas B'chinas Hamidus. This is a reference to Torah as is already drawn down even lower and comes down even lower to the level of midas, to the emotional attributes. Shezehu Inyan B'chol Eis. This is the idea of B'chol Eis. Or rather, B'chol Eis. Shehu beget is man v'eis. It's already within the confines of time, albeit in the spiritual sense. The midas d'atzilis, right? The divine attributes, as they are in the upper realms. Ella, but we're not talking about full blown time as we know it. Not even in the source of time, the source of creation. Ella B'chol Eis, but the Shinuim, we're talking about all the midas in one as they are without any change. So we're talking about, what's the bottom line? We're talking about the level of Torah as it is related to midas, that's Silas. And even concerning this level, it says what? Playing before him. What's the idea of misachekes? Again, the idea of delight, connection to the concept of pleasure, enjoyment. Why? We're talking about midas. What's the idea of schreik? Delight. This is the revelation of Tainuk. The revelation of Tainuk even more then we found it where? In Chachma or in Bina, or in Chachma or in Bina. So now we're talking about the revelation of Tainug, of pleasure, as it's in the Midas. Our sages teach us in the Gemara and Brachos that a person is not allowed to fill his mouth with laughter in this world. In other words, in the time of Golus. Specifically, schek, we're not allowed to fill our mouths with laughter specifically, which is the great, a very great and very abundant expression of delight. Hainu, which means to say, although we know that we are commanded to serve Hashem with joy, as the Torah says in Parshas Kisavai, that the reason why the Torah there says that it talks about not such good things occurring, and the reason for that is because we have not served Hashem with joy, which obviously implies that we need to serve Hashem with joy. It's not only with joy that we have to serve Hashem, it also has to be, we have to serve Hashem with gladness of heart, which is even more than joy. Because the pasuk continues, with gladness of heart. So although we have to serve Hashem with joy and with the gladness of heart, we are prohibited from filling our mouths with laughter. Which means that this indicates the feeling of a very great measure of joy. And that cannot take place until Mashiach comes, until the world is in a state of completeness. But nonetheless, what do we see at the end of the day? That tzchik, misachek is the form of a chol eis, even when the Torah is at the level of midas, in the upper realms, midas shalamayla, we still say misachekes. It's connected to the idea of what? Of delight. Why is that? The inyan zehu b'midas dafke. This is specifically as it is at the level of midas ki hamshochas hataynik b'meichin ene bizgalas kolkach. Because when the idea, the concept, the level of pleasure comes down and is drawn down into the level of intellect, yes, it's revealed, either in the sense of, as we mentioned before, the face turning with this gold radiant color, or as we spoke about this galus atik bebina, the revelation of atik in the next level of bina, the first one being chachma, the second one bina. Nevertheless, you don't find the revelation of pleasure in its full sense at the level of meichin. In the intellect, because the intellect is still, as it were, cold, and in the process of contemplation and reaching into the meaning of what you're of the experience, therefore it is only felt top of page Vav. It's only felt in the face turning to this, the face attaining this gold radiance. Where do we find pleasure, actual pleasure, full pleasure expressed? Specifically when it comes to the midas, to the emotions, that's where we find the revelation of tainuk, of pleasure, in its fullest measure. Then we go on to the fourth aspect as the pasuk describes Torah. The pasuk continues, playing in his habitable world. So over here we're talking about the next stage down. What's artzai? Eretz, Lamaila in Sfiris, Eretz is the idea of Malchus. The Koyal is Lapshus HaTorah Sfiris Malchus. We go from Midas, we come down to the level of Malchus. What's Malchus? B'chinas Eretz. The aspect of Eretz. The Malchus is Shirish and Ivrain de Biyah. The Midas is still associated to Atzilus, to the higher realm. Malchus is already the source of what? Of the lower realms of B'ri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. So we're talking about Torah as it comes down even into a lower level. And over here we're also saying what? Again we're talking about what? The idea of misachekes, playing in his habitable world. So again the reference of Torah as what? As connected to the idea of tainuk, of delight, but where, as it finds expression in Malchus, the source of creation. Source of creation as we know it in the realms of B'ri, Yitzir, Asiyah. Or rather, the Torah as it finds expression in the source of existence as we know it, our frame of context of existence. And the pasuk concludes finally, Vishashu ayes b'nei adam, my delights with the children of man. What do we see? over here, if you mentioned before, the Rebbe mentioned in the brackets on the top of page Tzadik Hey, that when it says Shashuim the first time, it just says delights. It doesn't say my delights. Dafke, specifically, when we come to the very lowest level, Vishashuai, when it comes to the level of Bnei Adam, Torah as it is at the level of Bnei Adam, of humans, which means the Koyi ala Torah Kvishnim Shechalamata Dafka. This is a reference to Torah as it comes down into our physical realm, into our world. In other words, Bnei Adam, humans. When it comes to the very lowest level of Torah, as Torah finds expression where? Is connected to what? To our physical world, to human beings. Over there it is referred to as Shashuai, Hashem's delights, my delights, which we don't find in any of the ones before. Here we go back, not to the level of Tainuk, not to the level of pleasure, as it finds expression in Torah at the level of Chochmah, of Bina, intellect, not the expression of pleasure as it is at the Torah as it is at the level of Midas, not the expression of Torah as it is at the level of Malchus, but we're going back to Torah as it is with Hashem Himself, to Amayim. Where does the aspect of Torah as it is beyond pleasure, Torah as it is connected and bound up with the very essence of Hashem, where does that find expression? Specifically when Torah comes to where? To be connected to Bnei Adam, to humans. My delights. These are the very essential. These are the very essential delights, meaning Torah as it is at the level of Atzmus, connected to the very essence of Hashem. Because specifically to learning Torah down here in this physical world, in our realm, we reach the very essential delights as Torah is at the level of the very essence of Hashem. So this is the bottom line of what the Rebbe is trying to say. Torah, as it is connected to Tainuk, to the level of Pnimius HaKesed, which is, although a very, very high level beyond the norm, nevertheless, it's already, you're talking about something, as it were, which is the next level, the secondary level of Torah, relative to Torah as it is the very essence of Hashem. That will find expression in Chachma and Bina, that will find expression in Midas, that will find expression in Malchus, right? But then there's a level of Torah of Amayim, the very essence, Torah as it is the very essence of Hashem. But that level of Torah is generally bound up with Hashem Himself, and as the Rebbe is going to say later on, this is Torah. From over here, the highlight is not so much the Torah aspect; it's more the idea of the Hashem aspect in this connection between Torah and Hashem, and that's normally beyond expression. Where does that specifically find expression? Shashua in this world.
With the fulfillment of the Torah.
Precisely, Dafke in the fulfillment of the Torah. Dafke when we apply the Torah, that's where we find the expression of Torah at the very highest level. And the Rebbe will spell it out in greater detail, and we'll continue Mitzvah Shem on Sunday.